Thank you.
Okay, sure. All right, so Eliran, do you want to say anything first, or should I just dive right into my slides?
You can start. I'm recording. Thank you, Fara.
Okay. So it's so nice to meet all of you. I should have asked, but maybe we'll do another round afterwards about who's doing ABM. I think, Danny, I know you are at Rookout, and some of you mentioned that you're going to try things, which is great. 1 second, let me put this in presentation mode. And can you guys see the screen?
Yes, we can.
Yeah.
Okay. Okay, great. So just a bit about me and why I am talking to you about ABM. So at Zerto, I was there for 9 years, right? So that in terms of revenue is from about 250K in year 1 to more than 100 million in year 9, year 8 and 9, more than 100 million. I was responsible initially for digital marketing and then grew and grew and grew to be responsible for all of corporate marketing. So that's demand gen, brand, events, all that. SDRs were under me, and I had a 65-person team. The experience that I want to talk about today, though, is specifically related, of course, to ABM. And in 2018, I went to my boss, who was the CMO. I was VP corporate marketing. And I said, you know, everyone's in marketing is talking about this ABM thing. I want to try it. He pretty much told me to go away. So I told him anytime you get a no, you just say, well, I'm going to do a little pilot and then we'll see how it goes. So we built an ABM pilot, which was 5 reps at Zerto who were responsible for target accounts. So there were 5 target account reps, meaning they had the biggest, juiciest deals, and they owned those deals globally. So it makes it easier. We can talk a little bit about some of the challenges, but that definitely can be a challenge of ABM. Who owns the account is complicated in large organizations. But in this case, they owned the account worldwide, so it made it easy. We had 45 companies so each rep obviously had 9. And I hired 3 ADRs. Instead of SDRs, they were ADRs, and they helped me that first year to, try to implement this sort of vision that I had around ABM. I'll talk to you about what we did and all of that. But in 2019, we scaled the program. It was successful that first year. We had a lot of success with those 45 companies. We didn't see closed one in the first year. I'll talk about that. These are deals with very long, lead to close deal cycles. But we did see a lot of traction with those companies that we had never had before. So in 2019, we scaled the program to all reps. All reps got 25 target accounts that they picked. They were notated in Salesforce. So we knew, right, these are your target accounts versus yours versus yours. We scaled it to then over 2,000 accounts, right, based on the number of reps worldwide. We actually were doing it only in the US and the UK. Outside of that, we didn't bring them into the ABM program. It was a little bit complicated. We can talk about GDPR and other things, but it was complicated for many reasons to do it other places. We rolled it out in 2019 to everything, meaning if a field marketer was doing a field event, they had to have a certain number of butts in seats at that field event from target accounts. All of our digital events were digital activities, all of that was focused on those 2,000 accounts. So nearly every person in Zerto marketing, which was a big team, right? Beyond my team, there was partner, the channel team, product marketing, right? Nearly everyone at Zerto was then dedicated in some way, and certainly field marketing, to ABM. And that year, we had great success and many challenges that I'll talk about. Marketing touched nearly 95% of all ABM accounts, right? So meaning a touch is complicated, and every company, you talk about that differently, but we had specific attribution software that we looked at to see. And this means that people from those accounts actually had a real interaction with us. I don't just mean that they opened an email, but they had a real interaction with Zerto in 95% of those 2,000 accounts, which was a big success. I'll get to it later, but some real challenges with that as well. There were definitely close ones in 2019 and 2020 that were sourced through the ABM program. So we did see some really nice results from it. And in November 2020, I moved from Zerto. I started all over again to run marketing at Run.ai. And we launched our product only this year in March. So around that time, April, we started with our first 25 ABM accounts. We have had meetings in 50% of those accounts. We put in a new group of 25 every quarter now.
Fara, can you spend a minute about saying who is your target customers and who you are selling to, because it might link to some of the context?
Yeah, sure. So at Zerto, we had a slightly easier time in terms of like ideal customer profile, because we were selling disaster recovery software, and every company can buy disaster recovery software. Every company does buy disaster recovery software. We were selling it for companies, particularly in VMware environments, but didn't necessarily need to be. And so the market of VMware customers is, I don't know, 500,000 companies around the world. Our ideal customer profile for ABM was an account that were not in already. So ABM at Zerto was for new account business. We weren't doing it for existing accounts. So new business, Fortune 500, certainly in the beginning, right? After we scaled, it was different. And those accounts were chosen together with the reps. So we didn't have a lot of say. They had to fit the ideal customer profile, meaning a VMware customer and a certain size account. But they didn't have to fit a much more strict criteria than that. ADRs had to do some environmental vetting when they did it. At Run.ai, our ideal customer profile is different. We are a company that sells software in the AI infrastructure stack. So if you're buying hardware for running these AI, very large AI models, you need something to help you orchestrate the running of that hardware and the applications that run on that hardware. And that's what we sell. Right now, we're selling into companies that are doing deep learning at scale, primarily on premises. So the 25 accounts involved a ton of research around who is buying GPU on premises. I can talk a little bit about how the research was done if that's interesting to anyone, but who's buying this hardware, GPU, for use on premises. Large companies that we find are doing, evidence online that they are doing deep learning at scale, not just BI or machine learning, but actual deep learning, natural language processing, that kind of stuff at scale. Does that help, anyone?
Yes, thanks.
So in the first 25 accounts, we were able to book meetings with half of those, which was really nice to see. We opened 6 ops, and we don't have any closed one from it yet, but we do expect one is in a POC. We do expect to close, I hope, in January from that. So the effort is slow, but I think going to pay off. I'll breathe for a second if there are any questions here.
I have one.
Yeah.
So how were the meetings, like how did the reach out happen? Was it via email cadences, calls, events? Yeah. Like how did your reps make the initial contact?
Okay, so I will let me get to, I'm going to get to it in the slide after this. I'll talk about some of the specifics of what we did. But basically, there are sort of 4 key components when setting up ABM, right? You have to do account selection and research, which means you have to understand your ICP, and not just your ICP, your target lead, right? Your ideal customer plus your ideal target lead for ABM. You have to do the lead research, right? So account research, then lead research, then as personalized as you can get outbound targeting, so that's through advertising, field events and activities, and your SDRs, right, doing calls. And then the digital magic, right? Intent, using intent data, using retargeting, all of the things that you can do online. You can do, we'll talk about it, you can do LinkedIn targeted ads, you can do retargeting through Google Ads, when people come to your site, right? All that kind of stuff is super important to making ABM work. So to get to Danny's question, okay, there are sort of 2 steps. This is the ABM 12-step program. There are 2 steps, right? There's the preparation for ABM and the execution part. So Danny, what you're talking about is primarily here in execution, but first just to talk about preparation. Basically at Zerto, when we picked the accounts, the first year, those 45 accounts that, they were picked for us. Sales picked them. They knew the accounts they wanted to go after. Some of them, they had a contact there or sold in there before. We had no, marketing had no say on those accounts, right? So if your sales team wants to pick their own accounts, I think as long as you vetted that it fits your basic ideal customer profile, there's no reason why you can't just work with the accounts they have. If you have intent data, right? So if you're using a company like Bombora, and I'll talk about some of the other companies doing these type of things, but if you have intent data, picking account, using that to help you pick accounts is the right time to do it. For those of you who have Zoom Info, they have a tool called Websites, and they let you see who is looking for you or who is on your website, right? And there are a lot of tools like this. It helps you to pick accounts if you see someone who already might be raising their hand, right? So first, use whatever intent data you can, any research you can do to pick the accounts. The second is the lead research. So we picked, in both cases, both at Zerto and at Run.ai, we pick about 20 to 40 leads per account. We use Zoom Info and Lucia, but you could use anything you have, right? To try to, once you pick the accounts, to try to find the right titles in those accounts. At Run.ai, we look for 2 titles. One is in the IT team. So those are people who are either a DevOps type of person or some sort of engineering title responsible for managing the GPU hardware. The second are data scientists. So we sell to both. We need both at the table to make a sale. So we look for 20 to 40 leads, and it's kind of half-half between who we find in the IT side and who we find on the data science side. Again, intent becomes very important here. If you have intent data like Bombora, you can also find, or you're using an ABM platform, I'll talk about those, you can find specific people sometimes who are raising their hand or who are researching your area. So the intent data is super valuable if you can afford it, which we'll talk about. The second part, and this is to Danny's question, is, okay, so how do you execute? You've got your accounts, you've got your people, you know who you want to go after. So you have a few hundred people on the list, right? There are a bunch of different things that should happen probably all at the same time. Number one is inviting them to specific events and activities. You need to create content for them. So that's webinars, or we would do at Zerto, we would do lunch and learns, right? That are targeted very specifically, either by industry or even sometimes for a specific company. We would invite people from a target account to a webinar for their account, like how to help Citibank run disaster recovery. And we would invite all of those 40 people that we had pulled to that webinar. So we've done very, very specific content for a unique audience. We've done content for different industries, and then we've done just sort of generic content around things that they need to know, right? So the first thing is to invite them to specific things. To do the LinkedIn ads are super, super important to this. So you can match accounts and match specific leads inside LinkedIn. You need very large lead lists to do that, but we were able to do it even at Run.ai. we just sort of added people in, even if they weren't exactly perfectly matched. Use LinkedIn to do some targeting. Create personalized content drip campaigns, email drips. So by personalized, I mean mention the company names in those. There's a tool called Lemlist that we use where you can put in an image that's personalized. So let's say you're talking to Citibank, you can put in an image and the person in the image is wearing a Citibank t-shirt or something like that, just to draw attention. I don't think it's super valuable that brings maybe more people than the content itself, but it does at least make people feel like you know who they are and you're reaching out to them specifically. And the personalized content goes hand in hand with focused emails to the A-listers. So let's say you pulled 20 leads for Ford, and in Ford, you let's say 5 of those are kind of more senior people that are we really, really want to get in front of. Let's say one of them in your research, you saw he did a presentation on stage at whatever event. And from that, you have from that presentation that he did, that he has the problem that you solve and whatever. Those people we take out to a sort of separate group. They still get all the other stuff. They get invited to things, they get targeted on LinkedIn and in Google. But those 5 people get a specific personalized email that is either from our CEO or CTO. And this is done hand in hand with an SDR who's responsible for actually crafting the email and managing the email program and putting the whole thing in Salesforce and making sure that it's tracked. But the email itself comes from CEO or CTO. And it's just, very light. We saw your presentation, or we got to you through this and that person or whatever. And then the very personalized reason why we should chat. And that one is just a sort of open-ended, we'd love to chat and share you a demo and get your feedback. So the A-listers get sort of segmented out for something a little bit more, even more personalized than the rest of the group. And the goal of this, and the reason why I put this one in pink, is like, just get them to your site. Get them to your site, get them on the phone. Your SDRs can call and validate them. And once they're on your site, you can retarget them forever, right? They will see your ads around the internet forever and ever and ever and ever, which is super, super important when you're trying to build some awareness with these companies. All right, so the key of all of this, all the digital stuff, is just a click. You've got to get them into your site. The key of all of the SDR stuff up until now, and during all of these things, the SDRs are making calls, is to validate that they belong, this account belongs in your list, right? Because a lot of them you're going to chuck and you're going to have to put a new account in. And B, obviously, to get those meetings, to see if you can get the meetings. So Danny, did I answer your question?
Yeah, I was wondering how you dealt with GDPR.
Yeah, so at Zerto, we did a very, worked with legal and finance and an outside, legal company to put a whole program together around GDPR. Right now, what we did, in order to sort of help us with this, we did not do ABM in Europe. We kept it to the UK, and we worked in the UK with leads that had already come in. So we were working with a very large database already. And we were working with leads that had already come in through, something. It might have been 5 years before that, but at least the lead was in our database for a reason, and we could point to them being in our database for a certain reason. So for Europe, we were culling leads from our database. For the US, we were pulling leads from ZoomInfo and other sources like that. It's different. It was different at Zerto, right? We had a lead database of, 500,000 people. At one point, it was 800,000, right? We had a huge, huge database, and we could use our own database to try to at least start from. At Run.ai, it's different. So at Run.ai, we just simply pull the names from ZoomInfo. We are only doing ABM in the United States. We often use the low-level contacts in the United States at a company to try to get to someone in Europe. So We had meetings at BMW in Germany, but of course we don't do any cold outreach in Germany. Germany is a place where you will really, you will really suffer if you try. We did low-level contact research on the data science team in BMW in the US to help us get to the influencers that we were trying to get to in Germany, and it worked. We have BMW POC that should happen any day now. So you have to be a lot more creative if you're going after European companies. I wouldn't bother. I would start GDPR and I would start your ABM in the US. If you are a company that is specifically going after Europe, we can talk offline about some of the things we did. The issue with California is going to be interesting. We'll see, right? California, right? Canada, definitely leave out. Canada, Australia, most of Europe, leave out of your cold drips. You can do other things. You can target them on LinkedIn. You can still target them in other ways, but you can't just add anybody into your database. I will say one thing that's important is that even though ABM is probably the most important thing that I'm doing right now, I'm not only doing ABM, right? If I don't do the webinars that are the third-party webinars that bring in 500 people at a time, I won't have some of these leads, right? I do need to start, to build the lead database. And I know that over time, getting someone in from a third-party webinar where I can prove that they came to me for a certain reason, and that's why I'm emailing them, is going to be very important. Okay.
A quick question regards the qualification process that each lead goes through before he have a meeting with a sales person. So we are doing some LinkedIn automation to generate leads and meetings, but sometimes we get like meetings with just curious people, and we try to minimize the amount of unrelevant leads or unqualified. So how do you make sure that you get less noise and less meetings, making sure you have qualified leads converted to meetings?
Yeah, I mean, we have a pretty senior SDR, and I think that helps because he's not going to pass on anything that he, doesn't think he'll get paid on, right? And he won't get paid if he passes on a meeting that doesn't get qualified. So it's limited for us right now in terms of the garbage that we're getting, but at Zerto we got tons of garbage, right? And we got a lot of complaints from salespeople about that. I think sometimes an SDR gets excited and thinks that, hey, this really could be something. But what we did at Zerto to minimize it was to create, I mean, there's sort of two things happening. For a regular SDR, they have very specific criteria that have to be met in order to book a meeting, right? So we had maybe 5 questions that had to be answered. And if they couldn't answer those 5 questions, they had to at least tell the sales rep, look, only 3 of the criteria are met. Do you want the meeting? Right, so they were able to do it that way. We built very specific criteria. ADRs were different. So an ADR could book a meeting, let's say inside Ford, even if this wasn't necessarily qualified, with a different set of criteria. As long as this person had some knowledge about the company's disaster recovery, they could book a meeting, and it was booked as a research meeting. So salespeople, some loved it, some hated it. Salespeople could take a meeting, which was a demo, right? Or, sort of a traditional first meeting, which often includes a demo. But they could also have meetings booked in their calendar that were research and informational meetings, where they were trying to learn something about the account. The salespeople, in my belief, the salespeople who were good were taking as many of those research meetings as they could, because the research meeting told them, well, we don't, one of the things at Zerto that was interesting to know or helped us was when there was a storage refresh in a company, they're often pulling out their DR. It's just the storage, right, and backup go together. And so they were all often rethinking DR when they did a storage refresh. So if you could have this low-level person and have a discussion about when the next storage refresh is, you could get a ton of information from them. The salespeople who did those meetings, I think, did better. But
Right.
some salespeople said, never give me one of those. It's a complete waste of my time. And some salespeople said, give me more. So I think it's just about setting expectations with sales, but definitely part of the sales marketing alignment of ABM is what is the criteria for me to take a meeting? If it meets these criteria, book the meeting. If not, tell the person, thank you so much. And it was a nice chat, and, keep nurturing them if you think that they're interesting enough for some reason for the future, or drop them. And we do. Our SDR talks to many, many people that don't fit our ICP. For example, right now in our ICP, there are clouds that we can work with and clouds we can't. That's it. He puts a note in Salesforce. This is, not relevant for 2020 and 2021. Maybe it'll be relevant in the future. And he doesn't book it.
Mhm.
Do you have time to take maybe another quick question?
Yeah, sure.
My question is regarding the personalized content drip. I think the challenge for us is that we are, even if we deal with very big accounts, the decision makers as a committee, a very, very small committee. So it's 3 people top. So we do not have the privilege of generating 20, 30, 50 leads. I have exactly 3.
Okay.
And so what we're trying to do, we're trying to push content personalization with a dynamic landing page and segmented email nurturing and all that. But my honest question is, how much resources and how much time would you put, and where's the stop to, segmenting the content and creating all these segmented ads and so on?
Yeah, it's a good question because it can never end, right? You can do this forever. And if you have 3 leads, you have to be super, super careful. I'll give you an example from yesterday. So Adobe is one of our accounts. We know they're doing, deep learning at scale. We're not 100% sure if they're buying GPUs and using them on-prem, but they fit into our ICP. We have, right, I told you the A-listers. So those 3 people would probably be in your A-listers group, and you need to really find something unique to email them about. So this A-lister was on the list, but we put him in a regular drip, a drip that was doing so well that we're like, let's just put these A-listers in the drip. We don't have something to do with them right now. Anyway, we put him in a drip. He answered our emails. He was very, very angry to have been put into a drip, right? We ruined it. We just ruined it. We won't get him back. He's angry. We wrote him a nice email and he was nice about it and whatever, but he was like, this is unsolicited. You're not allowed to do this. Take me off your list and don't ever call me, right? So you have to, you're going to have some of those. And it's going to hurt if you only have 3 people in each account that you talk to. So you're going to have to do the legwork on LinkedIn and with retargeting to try to get them to your content. So maybe they'll be friendly when you do send the unsolicited email, right? I think the key to that is, sending content that's valuable. I don't think anyone objects to an unsolicited email about something that is top of mind for them. They just don't even think about it as unsolicited. They do think, hey, do you want to take a demo? I'll give you an Amazon gift card. They do think of that as an unsolicited email, right? So I think the key is research, tons of research on the people. I'll give you an example. We had, I'll keep coming back to it. I should have put a slide together just on Ford, but maybe I'll send you guys a slide afterwards on Ford and what happened with Ford. But Ford was this account. We kept talking to people and lots of people around the people, but we knew who we need to get to. And we found that one of the top A-listers in the account had given a presentation on their, what Ford is doing with data science, right? He is a professor and likes to speak at conferences, and all this stuff is out there. And we found this amazing presentation. Now, with him, we took him out of the list entirely, and we had our CTO send him, we did the CTO sending the email. And he responded. He wasn't at that time willing to take a demo himself, but he passed us to the top of the food chain at Ford Data Science, right? So I think it was just because in that email we talked about, we watched your presentation. Our CTO sends an email to someone. I watched your presentation. I'm fascinated by what you guys are doing. This is, you know, what I loved about it. I also am curious to ask you about why you're doing that, right? It was a real email from one technology person to another technology person, and he responded, right? He's not going to say, who are you? What's this solicited email from a CTO of a company who watched his presentation and has something valuable to talk to him about? Does that make sense? But I couldn't send that email. The CTO had to send that email.
Did you ever try and send, God forbid, unsolicited offline materials, swag, letters, nice things, like really nice things, just say, let's have a discussion?
Yeah, I didn't include it here. At Zerto, we did a lot of, we did a lot of, you know, direct mail. So I haven't done it now for two reasons. One, everyone's at home. I don't know how direct mail campaigns are working unless you have people in your database that are vetted that you can ask them for their home address, right? So if you have a closer connection, I see people doing it with customers, you know, that they've engaged with. A friend of mine did, it's such a nice idea, like a wine tasting. So they had a field event where they send a couple of bottles of wine and, you know, some swag, and everyone gets on a Zoom and they have you know, a vintner, whatever, come on and talk about wines. And I think that's fantastic, but you have to know where these people live. And I don't have access to that information. I have, of course, corporate addresses from ZoomInfo, but you have to be a level deeper in a relationship with them. I don't see how sending swag works right now, but if any of you have experience with that, I would love to hear. I would be happy to do it if I thought it could work. So,
Thank you.
So next piece everyone always asks about, I wanted to make sure to put this in, is the ABM MarTech stack. So at Zerto, we spent probably $300,000 a year on MarTech tools. And that doesn't include Salesforce. Salesforce came from sales budget. We like had to pay a percentage of it, but it was very little. Right, so we had a very, very nice budget for MarTech tools. My boss used to tell me that I never met a MarTech tool that I didn't like. He was always annoyed that I was buying more tools. But basically, right, the bread and butter of your tool is your CRM. I am Salesforce all the way. I'm not, I don't think ever going to be convinced to go anywhere else. I love Salesforce. You can do anything you want with it. It's a tool that's, you know, just plain vanilla and you can build it any way you want. I love it. But of course there's HubSpot and Pipedrive and many, many other CRMs, whatever works for you. On top of that is a marketing automation platform. I have a lot of opinions about this, but at Zerto, we used Marketo. Right now, I don't have a marketing automation platform. I have a lot of opinions about why, but we can talk about that another time. But typically, right, plugged into your CRM is your marketing automation. So the marketing automation, for those of you who don't have or don't know, right, is going to do, of course, all your emailing, but all your form fills. Really, it organizes your database for you. And will also include many, many, many other things that these tools include, right? And then the MarTech pieces, right? So we had many tools at Zerto in the MarTech stack that did other things, but for ABM, you need some sort of ad platform. So how are you running your ads? This group includes Demand-Based, Terminus, Triblio. We actually didn't use any of those at Zerto. We used a tool called Metadata. And I don't know why I didn't include them here, but they're not one of maybe the biggest names, but they are, they're an ad platform. You need intent tools. So Bombora is the biggest name in intent. We had Bombora data through Metadata. So Metadata was our ad platform. And then the intent data from Bombora was layered on top of it. I'll talk a bit about intent data on the next slide when I talk about what I have now, but intent data is worthless for me right now because I have a very, very specific target market that they don't appear in the intent categories. There are, people researching data science and stuff like that, but what I'm looking for is much, much, much more specific than that right now. If you're selling DevOps tools or something like that, right, you're going to find tons of good stuff if you buy intent data. But for me, they're not where I am. The next piece is the retargeting. Everybody should be doing retargeting. It's so easy. Google, LinkedIn, if Facebook is worthwhile for you, right, you should be making sure that if someone comes to your site and then goes, outside the universe on the rest of the web, you're following them. It's fantastic for brand. You may not get a lot of leads from it. I wouldn't call it sort of lead valuable from a lead perspective, but they think you're a much bigger company than you are. People don't understand how retargeting works. They all of a sudden just think, hey, I see this Run.ai company everywhere, and they'll tell us on calls, like, I see your company everywhere. You guys advertise all over the place. It's like, no, we just advertise to you all over the place. And then the final piece is personalization. So at Zerto, we used a tool called Evergage. So this is one of those tools where on your website, you can have different content for different audiences that come in. So if people are coming in from finance and through IP and sort of fuzzy matching, they can tell who's who. And of course, it's connected to your marketing automation platform. So if someone is a known visitor, they can tell who they are. So people from finance will see finance content and case studies. People from healthcare will see healthcare. People will see different things on your website based on who they are. It's very, very cool. Evergage and these other platforms, they also manage little pop-ups you see on people's websites, right? We have them on ours that direct people. So you can have different pop-ups for different things, right? If someone's a known visitor and they're a customer, you obviously want to get them to a different funnel on your site than someone who's not a customer. So Evergage does all of that. Engagio was bought by Demandbase, but they do some of the intent and the personalization, but now they're a part of Demandbase. And of course, Drift, but with Drift, I include all of the chatbot companies. I haven't used Drift. We used a cheaper chatbot at Zerto, which I liked just as much. And the chat is very valuable. Probably many of you have it on your site. I don't yet have one. I don't have someone who can man it, but our SDR sits in Israel, so it's not super valuable for me to have it yet, but I will probably invest in it this year. In terms of what I have now, so pretty much cut 90% of it out. I have my CRM, Salesforce, which I wouldn't budge there. I have no marketing automation platform. I use a few different tools to make up for that. I have drip campaigns that I do in two different ways. I use Campaign Monitor, which is like MailChimp or any of the other cheap email tools for my drips that are sort of the generic drips, newsletters, things like that. We use ZoomInfo for leads, and then I use ZoomInfo Engage, which is their version of SalesLoft or Outreach for the drip campaigns that are related to ABM. And I use a tool that I just started, a tool called Mobile Locker. So Mobile Locker will track the links when we send them in an email and tell us about the people who click through those links and how much they're reading and what they're doing. It's okay so far. I'm not like totally wowed, but I think it's helpful and it's very, very cheap. So I can connect you guys if any of you are interested. It does give you a lot more insights than just knowing that someone clicked, which is good, right? What are they reading? How long do they read it for? All of that. It becomes very valuable in the future when salespeople are sending links out. Then salespeople want to see, did someone actually click and read this? I'm going to have a meeting in 5 minutes. Have they read what I sent them? They can just go in and check. So Mobile Locker will be good when we have a bigger sales team. The ad platforms, we don't have one. I don't think this is necessary at our stage. Right now, I'm spending $6,000 a month on ads. That is the bare minimum for LinkedIn and Google ads. Like you can't really do anything for less than that. and an ad platform is too expensive. So I have someone I pay to run my ads, but a platform would require me to hire someone in-house to manage. So I don't have an ad platform. I may buy something called Influ2, which is a tool that will help me target specific people. So it's sort of an intent/ad platform. It's targeted ads to specific emails. We're going to try it out. I'll keep you guys posted. In terms of intent, I talked a little bit about how intent data doesn't really work for us. Our market right now is too tight. Our ICP is, it's not a small market, it's a specific market. And the intent data doesn't really cover it, the intent categories. And you can go to Bombora and you can say, send me all the categories in my area. I want to see what's relevant. So definitely don't buy it before you do that, just to make sure it's relevant. But we use ZoomInfo. So ZoomInfo has a tool called Websites. So at least I can see who comes to my site. Every month I add 5 or 6 companies that were not on my ABM targets, but I see them visiting my site multiple times. So we add them in and start to do research on them. Retargeting, again, I talked about, we do retargeting through the Google Display Network. It's our only Google Display ads are being used for retargeting. And then there's targeting on LinkedIn. So I don't know that I would call it retargeting, but on LinkedIn, you can do 2 things, account matching and lead matching. You have to have big lists. So you're going to have to throw in a lot of things, even if you don't necessarily need all those accounts, but they will match accounts and specific leads on LinkedIn with targeting. And then personalization, we do it all manually. Like I told you, we had to go look up for it online. We found that this guy gave a presentation on their data science thing. We wrote a specific email about that. We don't have any fancy personalization tools. I will say the thing that has saved me on the research side is Fiverr, right? On Fiverr, I pay somebody every quarter to look up a few things to sort of, do these companies fit my criteria? Find me evidence online that they fit my criteria. I've also had people on Fiverr fill out lead lists. When you pull your lead list from ZoomInfo, sometimes you're missing emails and phone numbers. So we use Fiverr for that as well to help try to fill that in. Okay. Again, I'll take a breather. Any stat questions? Oh, we only have 10 minutes left. I'm just talking. I apologize. Let me just finish up then with one more minute, and then you guys can tell me what you guys are doing. Right? Keep in mind, right, that this is as much about brand awareness as it is about demand gen. Obviously, the goal is to try to get some of these ABM accounts to become customers. There's no question that that's the goal. But all of your retargeting and your personalization and stuff has to very, very, very appropriately reflect your brand. So you have to be careful in what you're doing, but you also have to really be thoughtful about what you're sending to whom and what you're putting out there, especially on retargeting. They're going to see these ads everywhere they go. Make the ads interesting, make them something that you're proud of. Because, the holy grail is to get them to your site and then retarget them forever. And if you're running that same one dinky ad that, you had some person work up because you had nothing to run for 6 months, that's all they're going to see. So keep in mind the brand awareness piece is super important here, especially when it comes to the retargeting. The pilot, if you have trouble convincing sales or your CMO or, or your CEO that this is a good idea, just try a pilot. Put 25 accounts in, start at the top, pick a couple of these things that are relatively easy, put aside a small budget from your demand gen budget and start with a pilot of it. I think you will see that it's successful and you will be able to convince people. ABM, the whole thing is pretty much bullshit, right? Like marketers, we love to get, we get in a frenzy about our own, how fantastic we are at what we do. ABM is, I've been doing this since 1995. This is what sales used to do. in the old days, salespeople would do account research and salespeople would do lead research and salespeople had a Rolodex and they would know their accounts. That is no longer the case. I don't know what happened in the world of sales that salespeople don't do any of that anymore, but I could talk about that for hours. But ABM evolved into what it is because salespeople don't do lead and account research anymore. So we've taken that over in marketing and I'm happy to do it, but it's really just sales. It's a part of sales. The last thing is one important lesson as you scale this. So in 2019 at Zerto, we overshot, actually. We went too far. We put too much of the field and digital efforts on those 2,000 ABM accounts. And why was that bad? Because these accounts, most of them in the Fortune 500 and around that area, they take too long to close. So we, in 2019, ignored some of our bread and butter, which was, sort of the commercial accounts in favor of moving higher up in the enterprise. And you have to be really careful. So you have to keep, and that's, maybe a topic we could talk about in another context at another time, is sort of keep that inbound, outbound mix. Make sure that your ABM program doesn't take the place of all of your inbound stuff and all of the budget from your inbound, because you need those hand raiser accounts too that are ready to buy. And I think at Zerto we shifted too far in 2019, and they came back from that. We came back from it in 2020. Okay, thank you. Any other questions? Does anyone want to talk about what you're doing in ABM so far, and if this, if you've seen different things than maybe what I've suggested?
I would say maybe on our end that I was happy to hear that you're trying inflow too now, because we are.
Oh, good. Then I want to talk to you. Can we chat afterwards? Because I'm about to pay them. So I'd love to get a reference.
So we are about to pay them as well.
Okay.
We are about to pay them. I haven't even set up the campaign. We've just implemented the pixel and all. So be happy to chat. Maybe I'll just add something extra that could benefit also the people here, is that we are also setting up behavioral triggers, because like you said, it's all about sales. And we are going to great length to try and identify different patterns of when the salesperson needs to know it's time to pick up the phone and make a call. We are still at the pilot stage. We're just launching it. But we are trying something as we have a Slack channel for those salespeople who are on the ABM program, and we try and differentiate the different notifications that they get. But basically, if one of those A-listers, like you said, makes specific engagement in emails, or they attend more than X events, or they land in our website, we think that it needs to be top of mind for the specific account holder, and we notify them versus Slack. We tell them, hey, this is first name from company, and they've just registered to the event about X or Y, and we want them to know. And if it's relevant enough, I even want to send them an SMS, even if it's like middle of the night, right? But even if it's out of working hours, I want them to know that maybe now, for example, if a CEO requested the demo, officially requested the demo, I would like them to know. So this is a part of the process that we're trying now, and hopefully it'll be useful.
Yeah, that's super important. It's something I didn't talk about it here, but we're doing the sort of lead scoring, or doing it sounds like a sort of modified lead score, and determining when you're going to bring someone up to sales for call. I think it's super important to make sure that sales is like engaged and they're meeting you in the middle, and they're on board about when to call and who to call, and they're seeing that this activity is happening. I think they get excited about it typically when it starts, and it's good to, it's a really good idea to do it on Slack, actually. It's just pull those signals. You might also you should take a look at Mobile Locker, because you can see not only, that someone read someone clicked on a link, but actually how much they read. And it could, change your score potentially. There are a lot of tools like it, right? They're very expensive tools. I think one is like Seismic or whatever we had at Zerto, but this is, it's a very cheap tool that lets you see how long somebody read something and what they read.
So our lead scoring is still not as sophisticated as I would love it to be.
Yeah, there's no reason, honestly. We put such crazy thought into lead scoring at Zerto and this, and if they do that, and 2 pages plus one of this, and within 10 minutes, it doesn't matter. It really doesn't matter. Just pick something that this is what we consider engagement. Engagio has like engagement minutes, and you have these 45 like criteria that you have to set, like if they do this, but not that, and that, but not that. It doesn't matter.
So we spent like a couple of weeks setting the most complex and intelligent lead scoring, but I think at the end, it's just like you said, if you're at the beginning of it, just pick, certain milestones or the core things, and then improve it as you go, but it shouldn't be too much of a time waster.
Yeah, totally agree. You also will see, sometimes people will download something. Let's say they'll come in off a download from LinkedIn, and you'll think, oh, we gave that a very high engagement. But then when you call, the SDR calls on that, and the people say, oh yeah, I downloaded, but I never figured out from LinkedIn, like how to actually read what I downloaded. Like they couldn't figure out where the download went or whatever, it comes in a pop-up and people have them blocked or whatever. So they never read anything, right? So we give them some high engagement score, but they don't even know who we are. Like they clicked on something and then they were gone. So, you got to kind of keep on top of your whatever you consider good engagement, and just change it every few months and adjust based on what you're learning.
I think just from my perspective, because let's say I have maybe 1,000 accounts, but then because they're all divided between the different salespeople, and they can feedback because I'm on a pilot, so they can tell me, look, you're sending me too many Slacks or not enough. But as long as they are aware, and if there's 100 or 10 per salesperson, as long as they get a Slack notification, and I mean it's once a week maybe, and they know that particular. So this is for me what I hope is going to drive conversion for these decision makers, is really getting the sales to do what sales need to do, is sell.
Yeah, I think it's a great idea to do it on Slack. It's a really good idea. I wonder, I imagine there's like APIs into Salesforce where I can just have the notifications done automatically.
I did it from HubSpot with a workflow.
Yeah, it's a great idea.
I have a quick question.
Yeah.
So there's one stage that we kind of have a gap in. We have the list of people, we have their details, we know that they have some kind of intent or some kind of warmth as a lead. How do we tempt them to click on an email? Like what CTA? We've tried white papers, we've tried case studies, and obviously we've tried stuff like surveys. Like we're trying to tempt them to click in order to remarket, and just like you said, but we have a reasonable click rate, but it's not enough because we don't have a huge amount. It's not like we work with 500,000 contacts like you used to. We have like 5,000. So we need to make the most out of it. How do we tempt people to click?
Yeah, so I think for me, what I've seen work, and the truth is what works now, right? They are clicking only when they need information, right? It's just like us, right? Mm-hmm. You really have to talk to the people on your team. I mean, you have great people in your company on your team who are, even helping with marketing, who are in the trenches and understand your ideal customer. So I think you have a good opportunity to do this, but what would make somebody at this level click? At Zerto, we put out content that had nothing to do with disaster recovery at times, right? It was like, surveys of IT salary surveys and things like that, right? The click was super important for us because, right, getting them to the site, but the content isn't. It shouldn't be about you. It should be, what's working very nicely for us now are videos, right? short little video clips. We have our newsletters, let's say, are about, topics on Kubernetes with disaster recovery. It's like nobody knows how to do any of this stuff. It's all brand new. We put out these short little video clips, and people genuinely want to understand. So you have to dig really deep into what are the issues that what are the things that like people in this industry are interested in. And even if it has nothing to do with your product, put out that kind of content for them. I think obviously you're going to also have plenty of things to click on that are related to your product, but that again, right, you're going to see relatively low click rates on that. Just they don't know who you are, or they don't, and even if they do, they're not in a in a buying pattern today. They're not interested. The type of stuff we do on our website, I can send you, but on our website we do these generic guides. It's like, what's the best GPU to use for deep learning? Totally generic. At the very end, there's a section on Run.ai and how we can help you, but that stuff is gangbusters. I had, we just put them on LinkedIn. Well, I thought it would be like quiet over Thanksgiving holiday. It's all new content. So I added them to LinkedIn on Wednesday. We had 15 leads over the weekend, just from like, what's the best GPU to use for deep learning? Anything informational is what has always worked for us. Even if, right, buying a GPU, it has nothing to do with us, right? We don't help to buy a GPU, anything like that. Yes, everybody who uses Run.ai has GPU, so it's not going to be the wrong audience clicking, but it's nothing to do with me at all.
So how did it transition into a lead?
Oh, on LinkedIn, the best results on LinkedIn are from their own download links. So they are actual downloads on LinkedIn, and then we get a list of the people that download.
So it was gated content.
Yeah, it's gated. They were gated, but sorry, that content is available for free on our site. They just don't know it. It's the exact same content, the guides on our site, and it's great for SEO. It brings a ton of good traffic SEO wise. The same exact content we use on the site and as lead magnets. I can't afford to do both, so. Yes, people might come to our site at some point and figure out that what they just paid for with their email is also available for free, but that it doesn't really concern me.
Gotcha. All right, cool.
I hope that helps. Content is a tough nut. We should maybe do one of these on content ideas that people have had that are successful.
I just want to tell you that I thought that it was fantastic, what you just shared, both based on the principle of research. Like, we are surrounded by a culture that many times wants to jump. And I think that this requires high levels of empathy, because at the end of the day, these are just like human beings, just like us. So I think that it's super interesting what you said about that. And I loved how granular were you in sharing with us the tech stack. We are a small startup that just joined the portfolio in TLV Partners, and we're just launching now our early adopters program. So for me, this is key information. So thank you so much for that.
Thank you.
I wanted to ask you something regarding the, I don't know in which moment or stage of the company did you join and did you start that? But what is your key insight for to launch an early adopters program, like to start with it?
Yeah, so I mean, I started at Run.ai, I was the first one in marketing. There wasn't any marketing before, and I knew right away I wanted to put an ABM program together. So I think at some companies, it really depends on your audience. I think it's critical to force the company first to do a sort of study of who is your ideal customer, right? Get that ICP and that target down, the target, your target audience, because all of this will be wasted without that. But the lessons learned from putting 25 hand-picked research companies at the top of our machine every quarter. It's so, so valuable. Just talking to, you know, Chevron, Isuzu, like companies that, you know, in an area that we need to be talking to, even if they're not going to turn into something this year, has paid huge dividends for product understanding and direction and all of that. So I would definitely start with some sort of ABM, even at a low level, just to make sure you're getting your ICP right. Testing it and target.
We just finished yesterday, between yesterday and today, our long research on our ICP, defining it and, you know, mastering the list. So yeah, I think that it's a good idea to just like test some of the messaging and some ABM with them and see what is the reaction.
Yeah.
So yeah,
you'll know very quickly if you're hitting the mark, if that, like, your SDR calls and, or, you know, sales calls and that kind of light bulb goes off, you're on the right track. And then, you know, you just shift. We've changed messaging all the time. Like that first sentence an SDR says when he gets on the phone, we've changed that now 5 or 6 times, right? Because we're learning, we're trying to figure it out. And when he talks to a different audience, he has to use a different message. And he'll tell me, Fara, I went back. I'm using the old messaging. Don't tell anybody, right? Because like, that's what he's getting success with. And then I have to bring that back to everybody else. Like, no, we're not going to talk about it that way, because what's hitting home is still that old messaging, you know, when he talks to people. So you bring that back to the product team and you bring that back to sales and your C-levels, right? Like to say, hey, this is what's resonating with our audience. Super, I think super important in the beginning. At the same time, right? We still did all those things, right? I spent the first year building the demand gen machine, right? How does it work? How do you get people in the funnel? Where do they go once they're in? You know, because once we have more money to throw at it, I'm going to spread that around and do webinars and go back to trade shows and do all that, right? So built the machine, but with a high focus on ABM for this year, especially where you don't have trade shows and stuff like that.
Okay, thank you.
Anyway, I'm way over, so I'm sure some of you go and probably Eliran, you need to close this, but please connect with me on LinkedIn, and I'd love to hear from you guys and continue conversations.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. Take care.
Thank
Have
you.
a good day.
Thank you.
Bye.
Can I share it, by the way? Do you mind if I can like share it internally with a few more founders?
Oh, I'd be happy for you to do that. Yeah, that's 100%. I'm sorry that there were some questions. Oh, Ita, you asked your question. Okay, good.
I think
Okay,
everyone
good.
asked.
I didn't notice that there was anything in the chat.
Toda.
Okay, my pleasure. Thank you so
Thank
much for inviting me to do this, Eliran, and thank you all for coming.
Thank
Bye.
you.
Thank you.
Bye.